Hi. Good evening. Hello. For this month's meetup, I'll be giving an overview of Elixir. It's non-Ruby. So, bala ko sana every month until March, magbibigay ako mag-introduce ako ng non-Ruby language. Para by April, banned na ako sa front. Okay. So what is kung hindi nyo pa narinig yung Elixir, so dalawang tawag sa kanya. It's either it's Erlang on Ruby syntax, or the son of Erlang, or the grandson of Prolog. So I'll be covering. So I haven't been able to time this presentation, though it might take longer, it might take shorter, or mabore kayo. So I'll be focusing on basic stuff like syntax, and show examples on how to write code in Elixir. Yeah. So let's go with programming principles. Yeah, okay. Just a quick overview. Elixir, since it was built on top of Erlang, it's a functional language. By functional language, meaning it doesn't deal with state. It deals with a lot of transformations. It uses functions to take input and produce output, and be able to chain functions together. That's all I'm going to say about functional programming. Yeah, so another principle in Elixir is that since it's based on Erlang, it allows you to program concurrently without the use of blocks. So you think in terms of processes. Think of them as mini programs that have their own memory, and the way of communicating with processes is you send messages to each other. Processes are lightweight. If you're familiar with, say, the term grid threads, so may sariling, Erlang runs its own VM, so ergo Elixir has its own VM through the Erlang VM, and it has facilities for spawning processes. Now the process here is not the same as the Unix process. It's a VM process. For context, although I will not be able to talk about this right now, it has support for metaprogramming. By metaprogramming, code and its representation, they kind of have the same structure. The term is called homoiconicity. So Ruby has it, yes. Kinuha lang nila sa list. And, Elixir has it as well. Right, so I'll be giving examples now. I'll be taking a tour on, may IRB din sila, it's called IEX. Pattern matching functions, lists, bit, streaming, strings and binaries. So, in the interest of saving time, I'll probably cut it up to working with lists. Depende lang kung gano'n type of list. So, where am I? Let's put up my notes. So, yeah. Kita niyo. Lights. Sorry about that. So the one on the left is the IEX interpreter. Yeah, you want to run the help system. It's like a man file. So it's standard library. It has help system. So yeah. mabilisan to, sorry. Right. Elixir has support for anonymous functions, or as we see in Ruby, lambdas. This is how you create an anonymous function. This is how you invoke it. So, yung just call it. When you invoke a function, it has a certain pattern. Like if you assign it, sorry, before I should clarify the purpose of this equals operator. It's not really an assignment, meaning it's called a pattern match operator, which I remember I should discuss first. What pattern matching does, since this is a functional language, you can't really assign something to a variable, then reassign it again. It's more of like I'm matching the left-hand side with the right-hand side, parang map. So, A equals that works. This works as well. 2 is not A. So it matches the left-hand side with the right-hand side. You can use pattern matching is used everywhere. So might as well take some time to discuss it. Notice I used A. So every match is independent of the previous one. A in this case is 1. B in this case is 2. If I want to swap, I'll create a function that does swapping. Pattern matching is even used for decide, or say you have an if-else statement. It doesn't really, it has conditional operators, but or conditional constructs, but you'll see a lot of this thing. So it matches based on the input. If the 2 zeros, first 2 arguments are 0, it returns this string. Just the first, and then something else. The underscore is wild card. So doesn't really care. It's not used to it in matching. Return phase. The second argument is 0. Return buzz. Otherwise, just return the third argument. Yeah, I'll skip the other 2 examples. Just oops, sorry. Yeah. There. Modules. Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that. Packaging code is done through modules. Through this def module. So you name a module called times. It has 2 functions, double, triple, and then you execute it. You execute the script. So Okay. This is how you write a factorial in Elixir. So it doesn't use loops. It uses recursion. Yeah. So factorial of 0 is 1, and with the n factorial, you get n times the factorial of the n minus 1. Ito. It's interesting. Elixir has language support for pipes, meaning you have an expression, the output of one expression becomes the input of another. You chain it using that pipe and greater than operator. Something like this. So what this does, from 1 to 10, I multiply it by 2. So I square a list from 1 to 10. Once you square it, it filters out those elements that are less than 40. Lists. Well, it actually depends kasi minsan kasi na sinasabi nila okay yung functional, pero actually marami pa rin cases na depende sa sa use case. Oh, so doesn't mean that if you're using functional programming, your code will be automatically good. There's a lot of ugly functional code out there. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Yeah, sorry. What this helps you a lot is when you're dealing a lot with mutations, state transition, or imperative stuff like step 1, assign this to this variable, step 2, increment by 1, step 3, doing this. So yeah, doon tutulong yung functional programming. Because kung nakita niyo yung factorial example, it's just 2 lines and it doesn't have any loops. So there. Okay. I have a list example somewhere here, but I don't know where it is. Yeah, maybe it's in my notes. Right, I know. Right, okay. The enum module is probably one of the most common examples that you'll see. It's used everywhere. This is an example of how you use. Yeah, if you use Ruby, you're familiar with maps and filters or reject. Same. So this is an anonymous function. Basically, just multiplies each element like that. So those strings, yeah, right. Elixir has it borrows a lot from Ruby string interpolation. Familiar? Multi-line strings. So I just found out that the term for this thing is called a CJ. Based on a particular control character, it behaves differently. It processes that thing inside differently. How's our time? 8:30. Processes. Elixir, which is the fun part. So I'll be touching briefly on processes and distributed computing using Elixir. Yay. So, sure. Yeah, so what's a process again? It's a program that has a certain process ID or PIN. What this does, if you load this module and you run greet methods, it just prints hello. But it's also possible if you're in a running Elixir program to actually use that function to be invoked in another process. It's a bit hard to illustrate, but it's very so. Yeah. So what this version does, I spawn a new process. Then when this process starts, it waits for a message using this receive block. Waits for a particular message of a certain format, sender message. The curly braces are what's called tuples, right? Okay, let's try that. This is just a one-shot process. So after it receives its message, it dies. Right, okay, so, sorry if you notice it's not what's there, but, so what this does, the process that runs this program is one process, and this thing lives in another process ID. The way this calling program, so say A, calls to B is it sends, it uses the PIN to send a message. Once that receiving process gets this type of message that it recognizes, it does the code after that sender message and sends a reply back to that sender PIN. See, self is the process ID of the current process. Hope that's clear. This is slightly different, such that this program here sends two messages. First, it does what it does before. It sends world. Then, when it receives something, it prints it again. Then, it tries to send another message. But this will fail because, yes. So gaya na sabi ko kanina, once it receives a message, it dies. So at this point, the program will hang. If you're impatient or if you want to follow along, the code is in GitHub. I will post the URL. So yeah. But we fix it in the next example. Yeah, right. Oh, this is cool. Right, yeah. So for this version, I introduced a timeout. So after getting the first message, it does the post, it tries to send a message, but then yung pinadalhan niya, patay na yun. So wala na yung process niya. Kanina, nag-hang siya eh. Naghihintay siya for a reply. Oh, wala. So, pero dito, after after 500 milliseconds, it will time out, saying, oh, I couldn't find that other process, so probably it's dead, and then the program will execute. But what if you want to send or what if you want to create a process that receives multiple messages? So kunwari after the first and second, pwede pa siyang work. So this is where recursion will come into play. By adding this line, it's a recursive call to the same function. Yeah, so you might think that this is memory intensive, so one note is that if you use a recursive call on the last line of this particular function, the compiler is smart enough to actually consider, okay, this is a loop, so I won't push the same thing on the stack. It's called tail call optimization. Right, so gaya ng kanina, I send a second message, but this time it should work. You can bet since I can show it. So yeah, sorry to take that. Messages here. Right. Map, yes. Right, okay. So earlier I mentioned something about maps, that Elixir has maps. But this one is a map with a certain twist. Each step in the map is now executed in another process. It's called a parallel map. Yeah. It uses chaining to get the collection, then spawns a process for each element, then gets a result in turn, the third. Okay. What else? Chain. Okay. So I'm glossing over a lot of things here. If you have time, look at a lot of examples of later. So now it's time to run distributed. By distributed, this is like all examples here. This is compiled. So I just need to set it up first. So what this does, we set up a server. What the server does, it waits for clients to join. It registers client processes. Then it generates sticks. Like it sends parang ping siya. Every 2 seconds, I think. Yeah. So what I'm trying to do now is to start 2 nodes. Node being 4 minutes. Okay, sige. I'll gloss on I'll skip the distributed programming part. But so TLDR, what it does, let's say you have 2 machines and you want to run the code on another machine. Elixir has a way of communicating between two nodes and be able to do client-server things.
Same code.
You can run the same code, yes.
So it's like Erlang, is it because of Erlang?
Yeah, distributed Erlang. So Erlang has a way of, if you know the process ID,
Yeah.
you can send the function and do the stuff there. Okay, that's it. Yeah, next topic. So I didn't cover OTP. So OTP is a framework. Kung ang Ruby merong Rails, yung Erlang merong, or Elixir merong OTP, it provides a lot of convenience when you're developing distributed applications. Codes there. So yeah, and I mentioned earlier something about metaprogramming. Elixir has macros. Pretty nice, but it could get you into trouble in some cases. This I haven't. Well, a protocol is simply an interface or a contract between two programs. If I implement this protocol, it means I have this certain function available. And also, what are projects built on Elixir? There's a web framework or Dynamo. So far, yun pa lang yun also. Yeah, and I'm also reading the book called Programming Elixir. It's Pragmatic Programmers. You might want to check that out. Thank you.